Our next presenter found inspiration for her honors thesis in her desire to work with children. Jackie LaVigne is a senior from Arlington Heights, Illinois. She's majoring in psychology with minors in family development and disability studies. Working with Dr. Mary Foos, Jackie has been researching the impact of COVID-19 on the school readiness skills of preschoolers. We are excited to announce that next year, Jackie has been awarded a fully funded graduate assistantship at the University of Denver, where she will pursue a master's in higher education. Let's give a warm welcome to Jackie.
I want you to imagine that the year is 2019. It's fall. You're driving by a playground at lunchtime and you see kids outside playing during recess. As you drive by, you notice that kids are writing with chalk and playing hopscotch, while others are pushing each other on swings. Some kids are playing tag, tapping each other on the arm or leg as they run, while other kids are in line for the drinking fountain, waiting to get some water. As you drive away, you notice that some kids are walking in a line while holding hands to get into the building. This is what it was like for kids to be in school pre-COVID. Pre-pandemic, pre-e-learning, pre-masking, pre-hybrid learning, pre-half-full classrooms, pre-parent and teacher burnout, and pre-new normal. Little did we know that in March of 2020, a worldwide pandemic would force us into a lockdown. The University of Dayton sent us home from school on March 10th, 2020. At first, I was excited to go home. It meant seeing my friends and spending time with family, something I had wanted to do for so long. But then, less than 2 weeks later, my grandfather passed due to COVID-19. He was among the first 100 in the state of Illinois to do so. In fact, it was so early on into the pandemic that the hospital didn't consider him for COVID because he wasn't considered a close contact of someone with the virus. The hospital he was at didn't have the ability to test yet. It was still done through the state. I was forced to adjust. I was forced to navigate online learning while also mourning the loss of a loved one and adjusting to this new way of living. Preschoolers, like so many young ones, I was forced to navigate. Preschoolers have only been in school for such a short period of time. I was lucky. I was in college when the schools and universities closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Preschoolers struggle so much with e-learning because of their small age and lack of experience with technology and educational materials. Like me, preschoolers rely on an internet connection and a technological device in order to learn. However, unlike me, many of these students may not have access to a technological device or an internet connection. Preschoolers are heavily reliant on their parents, who are likely also working full-time in order to get their education while schools were closed. I'm willing to bet that you didn't learn preschool from your parents during a world pandemic, just like I didn't learn preschool from my parents during a world pandemic. We don't know the impacts of COVID-19 on children's learning skills. That's why, for my honors thesis, I took a look at the impacts of COVID-19 on kindergarten readiness scores in preschoolers ages 3 to 5. We looked at scores from the 2018 through 2019 school year, or the pre-pandemic year, and scores in the 2021 through 2022 school year, or our post-pandemic year. We looked at scores in the fall and the spring and compared the scores across the years. A lot of the children we looked at were from low income and low socioeconomic status homes. Now, 3 of the 4 tests we ran were through the Woodcock-Johnson tests of early cognitive and academic development. These tests feature a flipbook in which the instructor sits on one side and the child sits on the other, and the assessor asks a prompt based on the image on the child's side. The first assessment we ran was the picture vocabulary assessment, in which we asked children to identify images either verbally or by pointing. For an image that looks like this, we may ask the child to point to the boy's nose. Or for an image like this, we may ask them, "What is this?" in which we'd be looking for chicken or hen. The next assessment we ran is the letter word, or literacy assessment. This tests children's reading skills and asks children to identify a letter followed by a word before eventually reading words and getting even tougher, like school. We may ask the child to point to the letter on this page for this image, or "What word is this?" for an image that looks like this. The last Woodcock-Johnson assessment we ran is the number sense, or numeracy assessment. This tests children's math skills. We may ask them to hold up a certain amount of fingers, or "How many toes do you have?" in which a surprising number of kids get wrong. We may ask children to count a certain number of items on a page, or to compare items by pointing to the highest or shortest item. For an image that looks like this, we may ask them to point to the biggest circle, followed by pointing to the smallest circle on the page. The last assessment we ran is the Minnesota Executive Function Scale, or MAFS. This assessment looks at executive functioning in preschoolers and is run through an iPad application. Executive functioning in preschoolers looks like their ability to follow directions and pay attention. Executive functioning is a good indicator of social and academic functioning. Here's how the app is run.
Big elephants go here, little elephants go here. Can you look? Here's a big elephant. Get ready. Here's a little elephant. Get ready. Here is a big elephant. Get ready. Here's a big elephant. Okay.
Now, this child did particularly well on that assessment. So the iPad would tell us to move him on to the next level, in which we'd ask the child to put the little elephants in the big elephant box and the big elephants in the little elephant box. If he did that well, it would be a good indicator that he has good executive functioning skills for his age. Now, we didn't find differences in executive functioning or in math skills. However, we did find differences in vocabulary. Vocabulary scores got worse in the post-pandemic cohort than they were in the pre-pandemic cohort. We also found that literacy assessments actually increased. Children were better at literacy in the post-pandemic cohort than they were in the pre-pandemic. And this makes sense, because what were parents doing with kids while they were at home? They were reading to them. Kids weren't practicing math skills in the same way that they were in the classroom. It also makes sense that their vocabulary skills decreased, because how do children learn their vocabulary? They do it through interactions with peers and adults, which they weren't doing during the pandemic. It's also encouraging that math scores did not decline, because we're seeing those declines across later grades. Now, I want you to imagine that we're back at that same playground in 2023. Kids that were playing tag are now sitting in a corner and reading. Kids that were walking into school holding hands, their hands are now at their side and they're walking straight ahead. Children have masks on. And that water fountain, it has caution tape all over it with an out of order sign stuck to it. This is representative of not only how kids play, but how our world has changed in the post-pandemic world. This is our new normal of living. Parents and teachers are burnt out, and students are struggling to focus in school. Parents are tired and struggling to support their kids. Preschoolers are not excluded from this mix. But it's getting better, right? Teachers and students have learned how to learn in class with masks on, and masks are hardly worn at all anymore. Students have learned how to wash their hands, kind of. Students have learned how to go a whole school day without physically touching another peer. And teachers have learned how to give individualized attention to those that need extra help while also helping all the students in the classroom. Schools are doing the best they can at supporting their children, but there's no guideline for that. We didn't have a rule book on how to e-learn or hybrid learn or learn with masks or have half the kids at home and half the kids at school. There was no rule book for that, just like there's no rule book for how to go back to learning in this new post-pandemic world. I have some suggestions. Teachers need to adjust their way of teaching in the future to account for learning losses seen by students from the pandemic. Teachers also should be providing educational materials to students to work on outside of the classroom and making sure that parents and families understand how to utilize those materials. Low-income families are likely still feeling the economic impacts of COVID-19. We have to make sure that students' physiological needs like clothing, shelter, food, clean water, and healthcare are being met outside of the classroom so that students can be successful in the classroom. Primary and kindergarten teachers need to be working with students. Primary and kindergarten teachers need to be working with students who were in preschool during the pandemic on their vocabulary skills now so that they don't fall behind later in life. Preschool teachers can also be working on vocabulary skills proactively in order to prevent learning losses in the future. They can do things like encourage students to have open-ended conversations and allow students to think out loud. We also have to make sure that parents and teachers are in a place that they can support their students. We need them in order for students to succeed and grow for many years to come. We do this, and children will be thriving just as they were before the pandemic. Thank you.